what you wrote to see if it makes sense to you. Because if it doesn't make sense to you, then it's not going to make sense to whoever's reading it. And then to include your attachments. So a lot of times maybe you're sending something to someone so they can look it over, and you thought maybe you attached it, but you want to double check. Because a lot of times, I know this happens to me when I'm at work sometimes, where I'll send someone something, I'll be like, hey, I want you to look this over, and then they'll get it, and then there won't be anything there. And maybe your email is really quick. Maybe you're like, all right, will you look this over? It's attached. And then there's no attachment. They're like, well, what is this? And then they have to email you back and be like, where's the attachment? And then you're going back and forth. And it just takes more time out of everyone's day. So you want to make sure that if you're sending something, that's actually attached. So, and a good way to find the attachment is it looks like a little paper clip on most emails. And so you would hit that, and then it would bring up a file, and then you would put the attachment in, and then it usually has the attachment up top. So are there any questions so far on our steps? Yes?
Sometimes I wrote the email from my daughter's teacher.
Yes.
I use a very normal word like hello, this is blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
My full name. And then she wrote back. She used my first name and she used her first name.
Yeah.
So I felt like am I too formal?
Yeah. So I think it's always better to kind of err on the side of being too formal, because being not as formal as someone would like may get a negative response. But if you're too formal, then they'll just be like, oh wow, this person is really formal in their writing. But there's nothing bad about that. And I think in that case where you're talking about where you emailed your daughter's teacher and she emailed you back with informal language, then that's kind of a sign to you that maybe it's okay for you to use her first name since she used yours. And that would be a good indication that any sort of correspondence that you have with her, either in person or an email, then maybe you can use a little bit more casual language, like hi, so-and-so, this is so-and-so's mother, and you don't have to be like hello or dear and use that more formal language. So that's a good point, is if someone emails you back and they're being kind of casual or informal about their language, then that's kind of a cue that you can do that as well. But I would always double check, be like, is it okay if I use your first name? And they'll say, oh yeah, sure, or no, I prefer you to use my last name or something like that. It can't hurt to ask, and it can't hurt to be a little bit more formal than you need to be until you find that you don't need to be. Okay, any other questions? So now we're going to practice. So if you can flip over your notes page, we're going to go to the back. So here you should be looking at a page with kind of 3 sections. So 1, 2, 3. So the first one, if you could just take maybe 1, 2, 3 minutes and look over, and these are do's and don'ts of emailing. So put a check mark next to the line that you think that that's something that you should do. So should you write a short but informative subject line? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. So we would put a check there. And then maybe what if we say attach a file but don't say anything about it? Would we want to do that?
No.
No, we don't want to do that. So then you would put an X there. So just take a minute or two and go through those. You can talk to your partner if there's someone sitting next to you, and then we'll review those in a second. This first part, so I'm just going to quickly go over them. So we ready to number 1. So should you write the name of the class in your subject line?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's relevant information that your teacher or whoever you would need to know when they're scanning their email. So I'm scanning my email, I see someone from my class, I see it clearly in the subject line, I'm saying, oh, I'm going to open this and see what it is. So we would write it down. What about writing a sentence or question in the subject line?
No.
No, that should be in the body. Maybe you could put the subject of what the question is, so it's like, what's the homework? Then you could maybe put question about the class or question about the homework, but you wouldn't actually write what's the homework in the subject line. So you would write an X for that. And we said attach a file, but don't say anything about it. We don't want to do that. What about begin your email message with dear and the name of the person?
Yes.
Yes, so that's step 2. That's the salutation. What about use hi and the name of the person if you have a friendly relationship? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. What about using informal language like slang or abbreviations?
No.
A or LOL? That one that's a no. And that's one, especially with lots of emails going off phones and just kind of the way that text messaging has kind of increased over the years. That's a big no-no, especially for academics, but probably for jobs as well. Like, you don't want to use the letter 2 or the number 2 if you're saying 2. A lot of teachers are going to get that and say, I don't think so. And they're just going to maybe, maybe they even send it back and say, fix this before I answer your question. So, and if it's a potential job employer, then you're probably not going to get that job if they see LOL or text talk or something like that. You want to be writing complete sentences. So that's definitely enough. And then checking your email for spelling and grammar mistakes.
Yes.
Yes. Step 5. And writing complete sentences.
Yes.
Yes. And then only write your first name at the end.
Yes. No.
So this one's kind of a maybe. So it's a no if you don't know the person, or if they're going to be a formal teacher. It's a yes if it's okay. So Neem and I were just talking about it. We have a personal relationship. So if he was going to be writing the email, it would be okay if he just said Neem at the end. But if it was the beginning of the semester and we had never met before, and maybe he was trying to get an ad code or something like that, and then it would be improper for him to email me and say, hey, can I get in your class, Nima? First of all, I wouldn't know his last name, so I wouldn't even be able to look for him in the system. So that's something wrong right there. But second of all, I might be a little turned off, or I wouldn't be. I'd be like, well, other students emailed me and they gave me their full name and their full information, so I'm going to add them because I don't have to do any extra work to find Nima. Does that make sense? Yeah. So that's a maybe. So we'll just put a check and an X. And then ending your message with a closing phrase: sincerely, best, or thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so for this next section, these are some following email samples. So using your notes, make any necessary corrections. Try to use the steps. So we can go over this first one together. So it says, here's my project. What's the homework for tomorrow? So right off the bat, what's something that you notice?
It's missing the subject for the email. Is that the whole email thing?
Yeah, it's the whole email. Okay. Good. So we'd be missing our subject. And then we'd also be missing our salutation. So you could say, subject is homework. And then you would say, hello, professor. And then you say, so here is my project. There's no capital letter there, so we want to capitalize all of our sentences. So we say, here is, and then is it my project or is it my project? My project. Now it's okay if for a lot of our students are learning English, so it's okay if it's not perfectly grammatically correct. But there's certain things that you can do to make sure that at least the email is clear to read, and that's with the capital letters to start a sentence and a period to end a sentence. There might be a couple of misspelled words or wrong usage of words. That's okay. We know that everyone's learning. And the stuff that's missing. So, what's something that kind of pops out at you right away? What's it missing? This sentence right here, sample number 2.
Subject.
Again, so like the first one, there's no subject. So what would be a good subject for this one?
ID login.
Okay. So the subject for this one could be ID login for Blackboard, or maybe Blackboard login. Okay, so now we have our subject. So now I know what the email's about. Then what do we need? What's step 2?
Hi, professor.
Exactly. So step 2 is the salutation, and that's where we would say hello or hi or dear professor. Then here is this, hey, what's my ID login for Blackboard? So that's the body. So would you say hey to the teacher?
No.
No, that's kind of informal. You would be like, hey, what's this? You want to use a little bit stronger language. So no hey, maybe say what's with a capital W. What is my ID login for Blackboard?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it more formal, like keep it the email short, or can we add a couple more sentences like I forgot my login ID and what's my?
Yeah, I think that would definitely be helpful. I think that it's not a matter of it being really short or really long. The important part is that you're including all the information. So yeah, if you're like, I can't remember my ID login, so that's something that your teacher needs to know, because maybe if you just say, hey, what's my login, then maybe they think that you haven't checked or you didn't know or anything like that. So you telling them that you forgot it or you've tried and it doesn't work, then that's something they need to know, because they're like, all right, they've already tried, now they need my help, so I'm going to help them. But if it's just a student like, hey, what's my login, then I don't know if you've tried or not. Like, have you tried logging in?
So make it the email short is not part of the formal emails.
No, I think that the most important part is that they're getting all the information that they need. So sometimes maybe you have a lot of questions, or there's a lot of information. So maybe this is the first time you're emailing a professor. So you would say, hello, my name is so-and-so. Maybe my student ID number is this, so they can look up your information if needed. I have the following questions, and maybe you have like 10 questions, and it's just a really long email. But if it's all stuff that needs to be included that you're asking questions about, then it's okay if it's long. But if it's something really short, like you're going to miss class, or if you have a question about the homework, then you maybe don't need to give a ton of information. You can just say, I'm not feeling well today. Is there a way I can get the assignments, or is there a classmate I can talk to? The end. You could just say, I'm not feeling well today. My brother, wasn't feeling well either. My mom stayed home to take care of us. My dog's feeling kind of sick. If you give all this other information, then the person who's reading the email may not know what exactly you're asking for. So you want to be as clear as possible, but it's okay if it's a little bit longer. Okay. And then for the last thing we would need after our body is we would need the ending. So we would put thank you, and then put your name, or sincerely, or however you want to end it. And then so for this last one, I have 4 different scenarios on a subject or a topic of why you'd be emailing your professor. So if you could just pick one, I want you to actually log on to your email, if that's possible, onto the computer in front of you, and you're going to send me an email. And my email address is this one right here. And then try to use the 5 steps, and then if we have time, then I'll go over each of the emails to give you feedback on that. Yes?
Use thanks or thank you.
Again, one's thank you is a little bit more formal than thanks, so it depends on who you're sending it to. I generally use thank you for everything, just kind of as a... So I should have one in my email. Send email. So our first one is from Muhammad. And so let's look at our steps here. So do we have a subject? So step 1. Subject. I have a problem for logging into Blackboard. Is that a good subject? That's kind of clear to the point. You might want to shorten it a little bit and just say login for Blackboard or problems with Blackboard. And then we open the body and we say, so hello JJ. So that's good. We have a salutation. This is more specific, but JJ, usually when someone has 2 abbreviations for their name, it would be capital letters. So that's okay. But then you say, what is my ID for login to the Blackboard? Okay, so we have a question mark, so we have a punctuation, right? But it doesn't start with a capital letter. So that's part of step 5 is checking your work. So you want to make sure that you have complete sentences. And then best regards, that's good. We have a closing, but I don't know who this was from. It could be from anyone. So you want to put your name as well. So you'd say best regards, Muhammad. Yes?
Can I see the Muhammad from my name is?
Yes, so I can see this, but do you have to put your name when you're making an email address? No, you don't have to. So a lot of times, especially sometimes if it's from Blackboard, then you'll be able to see who the student is when they're sending it to you, but you still want to put your name because, again, it might not say your full name. So what if it just said Muhammad, and I had a couple students named Muhammad? I wouldn't know which one it was because there's no class information or anything like that. So it's best if you put your first and your last name, especially when you're sending it to a teacher because they may have a lot of students. That's a good question. Sometimes it will say your name, sometimes it won't.
Or about 3 weeks ago, I had a